Femi Abebefe alongside Mike Palm, the VP of Operations here at the Circa Resort and Casino, filling in for Michael Lombardi. It's a fun conference championship Saturday. Champ Week is coming to an end, unfortunately, tomorrow, but the fortunate part, we do get the bracket tomorrow afternoon or evening on the East Coast, and then the madness officially begins with the NCAA tournament tipping off next Tuesday. Can't forget about the first four in Dayton. Next Tuesday and Wednesday, we'll get the first four. Then we play for keeps starting on Thursday with the round of 64. We had a fun first hour. If you missed it, make sure you check it out in podcast form. Just search the Lombardi Line wherever you get your podcast. We'll have a fun second hour on deck as well. 15 minutes from now, would Palm have a qualm? We'll discuss some futures bets.
There's some
here.
Really qualmy things.
some qualm going on.
Falcons win 14+.
And then 30 minutes from now, Aaron Wilson, NFL insider over at KPRC in Houston, will help us break down the Houston Texans and the AFC South. Are the Texans now on contender status? Are they at that tier with the Chiefs, the Ravens, etc.? We'll ask that to Aaron a little bit later in 30 minutes from now. But I wanted to start off hour number 2 with the Big East championship game over at the Mecca, Madison Square Garden, where it will be Marquette taking on the defending national champion UConn Huskies. Huskies 9-point favorites here, total 142. Obviously, the status of Tyler Kolek, the all-conference guard for Marquette, is still up in the air, but I think we're all leaning toward him not playing in this game. At least that would be my anticipation here. That's why the number is what it is with the UConn laying 9.
I mean, if he was 50-50, this number is probably going to be 7.5. That's built into this line. I'm not going to touch it. I mean, this could be an in-game spot if you look like Luke, because UConn just, I mean, they're playing over. They're tied. Oh, they're up 25. Yep. I mean, they just go on these runs where they just, and it's not a 2-minute run. It's a 6-minute run, and they're so dominating. I think Marquette's a really interesting tournament team if he's healthy. I know people try to talk me onto them at 30-1, 28-1, and I never bid on them. But they managed to make it through and get to this point. So I kind of hope that this is a good game here. I'm sure UConn wants to be pushed heading into the tournament. We haven't seen a defending champ. We go back to those great Florida teams that are really overlooked in history. How good those Billy Gillispie teams
Especially
were.
how it's aged with, like,
Joakim
Noah, Al Horford, and those. Like, these are pros.
Right. So, yeah, I'm not going to probably touch this game unless I look at it and Marquette is really struggling without him. And then I don't even mind if the line runs to, 12.5, 13, because they can put it on you quick.
Yeah, it's interesting to see, like, I guess I'm anticipating that he's not going to play in this game. Yep. He's dealing with the oblique injury. I think if you're Marquette, you want to win the Big East tournament, but you won it last year. The goal is to make sure that your best player is healthy for the NCAA tournament. My guess is that they err on the side of caution and go ahead and keep him out for next Thursday or Friday, whenever Marquette ends up playing. Do you kind of take Marquette, though? Like if it runs out, let's say Kolek is rolled out, all of a sudden now we're looking at 10.5, 11, or maybe even more. No?
No.
You're just scared.
Lines like
you're scared
they ran to
UConn
15
wagon.
in the opening game of 15. Was a runaway. There's like 4 points of value there, and it just doesn't matter.
Remember Shaka as a dog.
It doesn't. Oh,
yeah.
Stop.
I just wanted to let you know. Shaka as a dog. It's
the only thing that is
Mahomes.
Mahomes is a dog.
Road game, home game, doesn't matter. At the end of the day, Mahomes is inevitable. How about the Big 12 title game, though? Iowa State and Houston. I have a play in this game. I'm curious to get your thoughts. Cougars laying 5.5, total 121.5. Tip-off 3 o'clock West Coast time, 6 Eastern.
I'm probably most looking forward to this game today.
Really?
Just because, Houston. Where can you find fault with Houston? Like, they lose 3 close on the road conference games to good teams. One of them, their first loss of the year, was at Hilton in a close game.
Imagine.
Iowa State went down there, and that game was 9 or 8.5. They stayed with Houston on the boards. They just turned it over way too much. I think almost 20 times in that game, and got fortunate they covered, losing by 8. Hilton, you can say, when Iowa State plays Kansas, maybe it's a push. I know Kansas State has a lot of people there, Texas. But with Houston and Iowa State, this will clearly be an Iowa State home court advantage at Hilton. I'm really interested in this game to see where the Cyclones line up. Can they take this Houston team to the wire? Can they beat them a second time? That's the one team that didn't get drafted. That's like a top 2 or 3 seed
Iowa State.
in our draft. Like Derek Stevens has Iowa State, right? Because we don't necessarily have to pay that out.
Yeah.
I think Paulie asked me, would UConn have got drafted last year if we did this? They were a 4. I said, I think people knew about them, though. They were on people's radar. But it might have happened that they didn't get drafted because not the sexiest team. And out here, most of these people come from the Midwest or the Southwest. So it's interesting. But I don't have a play on this game. I hate betting college basketball totals under because of the fouling at the end can distort it by 20 points. But we've seen Houston, who gave up a big run at the end of the first half to Texas Tech yesterday. Texas Tech had like 12 points and went on a 13-0 run. But TCU is a decent TCU team at 15 at half. I mean, this game could legitimately be under 50 at half, and then you're in a really good spot. Because you could bet the first half under 56.5, but you're in a really good spot to find a middle as well if you should play this under 121.5.
TCU had 0 points through 10 minutes. Like, legitimately, 0. Like, it's insane what Houston can do defensively.
How about Colorado State scored all of their first half points in an 8.5-minute span?
That's crazy.
Or they didn't score at the beginning or the end of the half.
That's insane.
It's out, right?
Some of these college teams, you shake your head is all you can do. I'm on Iowa State in this game. I took the 5.5. I do think there's going to be a little bit of home court advantage for the Cyclones. They travel well anywhere. That fan base is always supporting their team. And it kind of goes to my thought process with these conference tournaments is that you kind of want to ride some of these hot hands. And Iowa State, offensively at least, sort of has the hot hand, and I think they're going to feed off of that energy. They scored 76 against Kansas State, 76 against Baylor. For them, I mean, that's almost like 100 for Iowa State scoring 76 points. I think that we're going to see a better offensive performance in this particular tournament. Now, next week, I'm not really in on this Iowa State team because I think you ultimately play back to what you are once you get to the NCAA tournament. It's almost like a new season. But I think in this spot here, rolling that momentum, they're going to feed off of the crowd, feed off the energy there at what they're calling, Hilton South? Is that what they're calling it in Kansas City? I'm going to go ahead and take the Iowa State Cyclones plus 5.5, and I do think they're a little bit live to actually pull off the upset.
It's a short drive from Ames. I mean, it's not far at all. I was on the wrong side of their opening game. I took 6.5 with Kansas State. I said, look, I watched this game. We were here live in studio.
They did
nothing offensively from the 6-minute mark of the first half through the game, right?
Yep, couldn't score.
And I said, that's too many points, 6.5. No, it was no problem.
No, yeah. But they get down to Kansas City, and all of a sudden they find it. Like, they find that mojo, and I'm going to ride the hot hand here. So I took the Cyclones plus 5.5. How about the Mountain West title game? This one's interesting between New Mexico and San Diego State. Aztecs 2.5-point favorites here at Thomas and Mack down the road, total 141, in what has been a war of a conference tournament here, this Mountain West.
Here's my other play in college basketball today, San Diego State.
Money line or 2.5?
2.5. Okay. I said UNLV's toughest game would be the first round. And they got it into overtime, but they couldn't overcome them. San Diego State favored over Utah State. Were pretty dominant in that game. I think New Mexico punched their ticket with the win last night. They do travel well. There's a ton of people come to Las Vegas for the Mountain West every year from New Mexico, and they've got the momentum. I just think San Diego State is the best team in a very competitive conference, and I like them at the short price today.
Let's go over to the ACC because we got to get rolling on some of these conference championships. North Carolina, a 9.5-point favorite against the Cinderella NC State Wolfpack. Total 145.5 or 144.5. There's some 145s though in the market as well.
So I had Carolina in both their matchups with NC State, and the first one they were a short favorite. They blew them out in Raleigh. The second game they were down at half. Remember they had the big second half to cover the number. NC State led at half in Chapel Hill. I can't play them because I think NC State's playing very, very well right now. I watched that whole game against Duke, waiting for the Duke run. Never came. Good support. This will be a leaning house to Carolina, but there's good support for NC State there. I think it's a closer game than people think. I'm going to pass on it.
Yeah, I think it'll be competitive, but I wanted to split it to where I just wanted NC State in the first half. So I took +5 in the first half. You can find even better. You can find 5.5 now. Yeah. I pulled the trigger a little bit too quickly since the market's now out to 9.5. But I took NC State first half just because this is their 5th game in 5 days. I think that's a little much on the fatigue meter here to where I believe the Wolfpack will be competitive in the first 20, but I'll be a little bit scared about that second half with North Carolina being able to run and they can beat you up on the glass. It's a North Carolina team. Surprise, surprise. They're really good at rebounding. I only want first half NC State. So that's my play. NC State +5 in the first half. I do think that they'll be competitive. The rivalry, they'll have that adrenaline, but it sort of wears off once you get to the final 20 minutes. I think North Carolina could potentially pull away in the final 20. So I went ahead and took the Wolfpack in the first half. The Pac-12 title game, the final one of the conference's history here. Oregon taking on Colorado. Buffalo's 2.5-point favorites. There's a 3 in the market as well, 141.5.
I didn't play this game. I'll be honest with you. I haven't seen these two teams play enough this year. Obviously, it means a lot to Oregon to win this game to get the berth, and you're high on Dana Altman. But we'll watch as the conference fades into the sunset.
Yeah, maybe the mascots will gather together like they did at the football game and take one final photo for the Pac-12. Yeah, for me, it's Oregon money line. I took plus 125 with the Ducks. I don't even need the 2.5. Just give me the Ducks to win the game outright. It's Dana Altman at a plus number in March, having covered that team for 3 years back in the day. His teams are always ascending as we get into March. Like what you see in November is not what you're going to see in February and March. I think the Ducks are hot. They obviously have the motivation to be a bid stealer in this spot here. They beat Arizona yesterday. They're rolling in with some confidence. Colorado, I have respect for Tad Boyle and that team, but I think Dana Altman in March, as John Rothstein said, the man does Rubik's Cubes. So I'm riding with the Oregon Ducks. Fly, Ducks, fly, as we go ahead and head into Las Vegas at the T-Mobile Arena. So give me Oregon plus 125 on the money line. All right, coming up next, would Palm have a qualm? We're discussing some futures bets on the other side here on the Lombardi Line.
This is the Lombardi Line with former NFL executive Michael Lombardi. Now here is your host, Femi Abebefe, on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network.
Get an early start on your college hoops tournament betting with VSiN's full court bracket betting coverage starting tomorrow. We will have a full show dedicated to opening lines for every game, and you have full access to the show, the betting splits, and picks with VSiN's free access through Sunday. Just register at vsin.com/champweek. The VSiN college hoops experts Jonathan Von Tobel and Tim Murray will analyze every game and discuss with the bookmakers making the lines to find the best early value. Don't wait for the lines to move. Start your bracket and tournament betting with VSiN's Betting the Bracket show tomorrow, starting at 7 p.m. Eastern. That's 4 o'clock Pacific. Make sure you tune into that. It's going to be a hell of a show here. The brackets come out around, 3 o'clock, 3 to 4?
Well, the show starts at 3, but the majority of the brackets, announced from 3:20 to 3:40.
Yep.
And then they have the analysis. Once they start rolling, they go pretty quick through it. Yeah. But there's a lot of preamble.
And they start doing their predictions in the final 20 minutes or whatever, the fade material.
Talk to the head of the committee about
everybody
the
wants to hear
controversial
them.
Picks. Yeah.
Everybody wants to hear from the head of the committee. This is the Lombardi Line here, hanging out with you guys on the DraftKings Network. Yeah, please do.
I think these games in Dayton should all be at-large games. I think these 16 seeds that win ought to get to go to play on Thursday and Friday.
That's what I think, too.
I just,
it feels a little dirty.
I mean? Yeah.
It feels dirty. It's like, hey.
They bounce them. They don't even get to the main tournament.
Put the 16s in and then just make them the at-large. Because also, I think, I'll speak for myself. I only want to watch the at-large teams because, I don't.
Correct.
Newsflash, I'm not really watching 16s.
Versus 16.
Versus
16 versus 1
16
could
versus
be
1,
yeah.
But 16 versus 16, I'm like, nah, I'm good.
Right.
But I want to see the at-large teams because they're the teams that you're familiar with. Those are kind of those mediocre Power 5 teams or Power 6 teams or what have you. I think that would be a little bit better of a television product personally. But it is what it is. We're going to expand to 72 at some point. In 2 years? Something like that? 74? Who knows? What do you mean stop it? The TV dollars are out there, man. It is too many, but...
I think there was 25 for a long time, and if you didn't win your conference, you couldn't get in.
Imagine.
There would be teams ranked in the top 10 that didn't win their conference. You're out. UCLA always came out of the West, right? Because there weren't all the power out of the West. It was a big advantage for them.
Sounds like the CFP. That's what it sounds like to me. Every game matters in college football.
How about Notre Dame could be 13-0 and they have to be the 5 seed? Come on. What's going on here?
Join a conference. I don't know.
You could be at 16 soon.
Well, Palm definitely has a qualm about his Notre Dame Fighting Irish getting the short end of the stick with the new upcoming CFP, which apparently is going to expand to 14 in 2 years. We'll have to get into all that stuff. But
12 didn't work, Femi, clearly.
Clearly, yeah. We haven't seen it. Sight unseen. We're going to 14. But what is usually a Friday segment, would Palm have a qualm? Yesterday couldn't do it. You were out on the road in Arizona. So now we've made it a Saturday special. And this is a segment of futures bets that Mike Palm might want to get into, or some that he might have a qualm with. Those who don't know what qualm means, a mild state of nausea. This first one, Kirk Cousins, new Atlanta Falcons quarterback, Kirk Cousins, to throw for 4,500 plus passing yards, plus 425. Would you have a qualm with that?
Yeah, I think so because, well, I think this is still going to be a team that wants to run the football and play a controlled passing game. Do they have enough deep threats for Cousins to push the ball down the field quickly? And then what's his health? He's 35, coming off an Achilles, right? So I think this is a bit of a stretch. I mean, I like plus 425. Don't get me wrong for the price, but I think it's too much to ask, and I think there's too many landmines out there. You can go to the next one, and then I'll make my comments about them signing Cousins.
Which we'll continue with the Atlanta Falcons theme. Right now, the Falcons minus 125, the odds-on favorite to win the South. This next one, Falcons 14-plus regular season wins, plus 500.
Big qualm. This is missing a zero at plus 500. 14.
In that division, you think it's missing a zero?
You think Tampa's awful? You think they're just going to sweep the division?
I don't think Tampa's good.
They're going to go 6-0 in the division, and then you find me the other 8 wins. Femi. Here's my thoughts when I heard about the Cousins.
Mm-hmm.
Last year, Lamar Jackson, former MVP, now 2-time MVP, was available on the open market. Arthur Blank stood up and waved his hand and said, not interested. Not at all interested.
Went out of his way.
He rushed to the window to pay a 35-year-old guy who has 1 playoff win in his career. He has more regular season ties than playoff wins. Coming off an Achilles injury to pay him $180 million, $100 guaranteed, Femi. Make it make sense, as I said to Michael. Make it make sense.
More regular season ties than playoff wins.
Great. He said 2 regular season ties.
That's a great line.
One playoff win. I don't get it. I mean, I'm just saying it in the perspective he could have had Lamar Jackson, right?
Yeah.
Which would have been more expensive.
Now,
but also the upside's a hell of a lot higher.
Now, Falcons fans will always push back and say, we could have never had Lamar.
He was never leaving.
We would have just been negotiating the contract for the Ravens, but at least try.
He didn't even go to the playoff game. I mean, I think there was a real problem there.
I think there was a real problems as well. I mean, there's a reason why Lamar was tweeting about saying, hey, I'm done. Thank you, fans. This is my official trade request. And then a month later, they give him the big contract there. Like, my thing with the Falcons is that they never tried. Like, and I guess they did like, hey, well, we don't want to throw off. It's like, who cares what Ritter thinks if he tried? Like, it's Desmond Ritter. You kicked him to the rocks like a year later. I think the reason why I would have a qualm with this 14-plus regular season wins is that
you're looking at scheduling.
I think if you're interested in that, just bet Raheem Morris to win Coach of the Year at 10-1.
There you
double
go.
the price.
There you go. Femi's always got that awards angle.
If they win 14-plus regular season wins, newsflash, Raheem Morris is going to be the Coach of the Year.
What's the odds?
10-1.
Okay. Is he one of the favorites? He must be one of the favorites
he's like
at 10-1.
He's like the third choice, which I don't recommend betting, by the way. But if you're really into the Falcons, I guess that's the way to do it. Harbaugh's the favorite at plus 550. LaFleur, which, I mean, get lost, plus 850. They won too many games last year. He's not going to win it. They won too many games.
They're expected.
Exactly.
What are they? Plus 160 to win?
He would have to win 15 games to win Coach of the Year, which, I mean, I'm not betting plus 850 for the Packers to win 15 games. I'm not doing that. This next one, sticking with the new quarterbacks in new places. Russell Wilson, now the
we know
now
we know.
No competition. In fact, he's the only quarterback on the Steelers. 30-plus passing touchdowns, 5-1. Do you have a qualm?
I was reading Mina Kimes on this. She thinks this is like the greatest signing of all time. Now, remember, she is a Seahawks fan. Yeah. But she also likes Stadium Swim because she came with Levitard. And she really, even though it was very cold, we got to speak to her. And
she was a fan.
She's actually a very good journalist. Yeah. Right? She started out as an investigative journalist and then her whole path. But
she was on C-SPAN before on ESPN.
She wrote it about industrial factories. She wrote award-winning. Anyhow, what do you think his connection is going to be with George? That's the question for me, because if they have a connection, this is not that outrageous to me. I think of these at 5-1. If they have, he does throw a nice deep ball. He always has, right? Yep. He always has thrown a nice deep ball. And I know they're a run-first team, but I don't have a qualm with this one, Steph. I'm going to accept this one as a sharp look.
Would you put it in the account?
Now, there's a difference between what we say no qualm and account worthy. There's another level, but
there's levels to this.
It's on the radar. It's on the radar. We're going to shop and monitor.
Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson, our next one. Henry and Lamar Jackson, the Heisman backfield, 2,000 plus combined rushing yards plus 350.
What do you think he has left in his tank?
I think they got to manage him.
Yeah. 15 carries a game?
Speaking of 2,000 plus, he has 2,000 plus carries on his career.
Yeah.
And now he's 30 years old. I think that this is sort of a situation. You want Henry to be fresh for December, January. Yeah. So, I mean, they could maybe see him as the bell cow. Now, he is like the biggest person on planet Earth that ever played running back. So maybe he defies logic. But I would be a little bit concerned, though, with the carries.
I would look at the second option, which is the 15-plus rushing touchdowns, only because he's never played in a backfield where he wasn't the main thing you had to stop at the goal line, right?
Yeah, that's a good angle.
Right there. Now you have a lot of things. You have the play action. You have to stop Lamar. He's now becoming like the third thing you have to stop at the goal line. And I don't suspect that this offense isn't going to be in the red zone a lot. So I would look at the better value at 15-plus rushing touchdowns than the 2,000 yards, because I believe with you they're going to limit him during the bulk of the season.
Yeah, he could have like a 15 rushing TD season with like 800 yards. It wouldn't shock me at all. And the Ravens aren't really one for the tush-push stuff either.
No.
They don't do that with Lamar Jackson. So Henry could be the guy that's a beneficiary on the goal line. How about Saquon Barkley? 4-plus rushing touchdowns versus the New York Giants, his old team, 8-1. This is only a regular season bet.
Howie and Nick want to stick it to the Giants and really pound him. And I mean, what?
But I would be concerned.
Unthinkable that he would go to the. I mean, what are these guys?
You're dead to me.
But
good luck.
What? It's called an open market. I'm like,
shout out Tiki Barber.
I would take this only if it was rushing or receiving. I think rushing's a little much to ask. If it was combined touchdowns from scrimmage, I would look at that price. I know it would be less, but I would rather look at that price than it have to be 4 rushing in the 2 games.
No, I agree with you. Also, I got to check the Eagles roster to see if the Giant killer Boston Scott is still on the team, because that's the guy who gets all the rushing touchdowns whenever the Eagles play the Giants. Boston Scott not on the roster, at least in the depth chart, so maybe it opens it up for Saquon.
It's funny how their whole philosophy has been running back by committee, and then they go Saquon.
Here's $37 million, Saquon Barkley. All right, on the other side, we'll continue this NFL discussion, talking Houston Texans and the AFC South with Aaron Wilson of KPRC next here on the Lombardi Line.
This is the Lombardi Line with former NFL executive Michael Lombardi. Now here is your host, Femi Abebefe, on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network.
If you're not a registered VSiN.com user yet, you've been missing out. But hey, there's still time to get the VSiN Pro access to everything we do through the NCAA Championship Week leading up to Selection Sunday, which is tomorrow. Just go to VSiN.com/Champ Week. You'll get the daily best bets, the betting splits, the systems, the premium analysis, 24/7 video access, but most importantly, our all-new NCAA Tournament Betting Primer. Don't miss out on this VSiN Pro free preview to help you bet the tournament smarter. Create the free account now at VSiN.com/Champ Week. Full VSiN Pro access now through March 17th, which is tomorrow, so there's still time. VSiN.com/Champ Week.
Sometimes can hold out on Bill 80 and get a better deal, but you don't want to guarantee that.
You don't want to guarantee. But make sure you're set for Selection Sunday, where the brackets are going to be out later on.
Bill 80 was at back to the 90s.
Oh, was he?
With his girlfriend last night. Okay. And it was a costume contest as well.
Was that up at Legacy Club?
Yeah, best 90s. And he did dress up. I think he was Roy Orbison, but I think he's always Roy Orbison. He had a wig on. Which I don't know if he was wearing a wig in the 90s. But he said to me at the bar, he said, someone asked me, how do you feel that you will be judged by Mike Palm tonight? And he says, well, I feel the same as I have for the past 6 years, which was an accurate quote. Bill wrote for his daily newsletter a story on the tournament we had in the draft, which he showed up right as we started the draft. I wondered if that's how he covered the Bulls championship runs, by going to the parade. I mean, the story is the tournament and the whole week, but I digress.
Questioning his journalistic ethics.
Yeah, he should have been on What's My Line. Who would have guessed he had anything to do with sports? That's the shocker.
I'll show up for Game 6.
He was a hot shot editor.
Hey, it was a happening time to be there in Chicago covering sports.
He lived 30 years off the net hits the fan with department headline. Nice man. Bill A.D.
We love Bill A.D. He's always
Crazy Bill A.D. Nobody beats his prices.
Hey, he's hooking us up, man.
Yeah.
It's a free VSiN free preview for the VSiN Pro. VSiN.com.
Well, the newsletter and the picks are all. I mean, that's worth the subscription if you didn't even see the shows.
100%. But we do encourage you to see the shows, though. And this shows Lombardi Line. We encourage you to see this one happening right now. He's Mike Palm. I'm Femi Benfe. We're hanging out on the DraftKings Network. Let's finish up with the would Palm have a qualm? These next two ones are the last two. Kansas City Chiefs related, the two-time defending Super Bowl champions. Patrick Mahomes, 5,000 plus passing yards, plus 550. Would you have a qualm? They added Hollywood Brown, so you got to factor that in.
I mean, did that tip the scale? I didn't tip it for me. I'll have a little qualm.
He's a little light, so I don't know if he tips any scales.
They have shifted into being a defensive team that knows that Mahomes can make plays whenever they need to win games. But I don't know that they've done enough to say they're going to be that explosive offense again. So this falls into the qualm column.
Yeah, I think this is a qualm too with Mahomes. They're just not going to play that style. Like, they know who they are. They know what they have to do to actually get to the playoffs. And then once they get to the playoffs, they'll let Mahomes kind of do his thing. But even then, it's not the 350, 400-yard passing games. It's more like 250 is what Mahomes is doing. Then he can make those plays. Last year was the fewest amount of passing yards Mahomes has thrown in his career, 4,100. 2 years ago when he won MVP, he threw for 5,250. The first time he won MVP in 2018, he threw for 5,097. So I get the price of plus 550. That can look appealing, but I would not take that bet there. How about Travis Kelce, maybe the most popular athlete or most culturally relevant athlete going right now in America? 10 plus receiving touchdowns, plus 350. Getting a little longer in the tooth there, but 10 receiving TDs, plus 350.
I think that this is playable because, to your point about Hollywood Brown, I mean, you have to look at what's around Kelce and what options he has, and he's still so very good in the red zone. He's still so very good running these gimmick plays, and of course, he's great in the open field. So at plus 350, I don't think that's that awful. So I put that into the playable column. Yeah. No qualms.
It feels almost a little bit like Derrick Henry, where like he could have the touchdowns, but not necessarily the yardage. Like, it wouldn't shock us if Travis Kelce had about 10 receiving touchdowns and let's say 850 receiving yards. You know, like, even though he's going to be targeted quite a bit by Patrick Mahomes, but I just don't see him being the explosive guy. But he can definitely be the red zone guy for Mahomes since he's Mahomes' favorite target. So I like that for Travis Kelce.
What do you think now as we move on to next season and this relationship? Is
Kelce-Swift relationship?
The Swift. Is this Swift still going to be so impactful throughout the whole car? I mean, we only saw...
I think she is.
Really? Did she release a song this week, I heard?
I'm not Thursday. Up to date on the Swift
My stepdaughter's now, what is your favorite Taylor Swift song? Then she asked me, what's your least favorite? I said, she has 2,500 songs. How could I pick a least favorite? She's very prolific.
She's got a power rank all 2,500 of these songs.
Lover. I told her Lover was my favorite song.
So are you power ranking the originals or just Taylor's version? How do you factor that in?
That's tough.
It's you got to you got to factor
categories.
You got to break it all down. I think there'll still be a thing that's as long as they're together. I mean, she's the biggest celebrity going right now, right?
On the planet.
On the planet. Hey, everybody knows Taylor Swift, most famous person ever. Aaron Wilson will be joining us in the next segment from KPRC in Houston. So we'll discuss the Houston Texans and the AFC South. But we can talk a little bit of some college hoops here while we have time before we get to Aaron Wilson to wrap up the show discussing the NFL. The conference championships are still rolling along. Later on today, we'll get the MAAC, the MAC, the Conference USA. Any of those that you'd like to start with, any plays that you have in some of these Big West championship that's later on this afternoon. We got the WAC.
But that's all isn't that all the way out there in Henderson? That's.
Hey, you're not gonna find me there. You're not gonna find. You gotta
Bruce Marshall said it's 2 blocks from his house, so he enjoys going to the games.
I tell you, I got to take my passport to get there. But any action for you in any of those games?
I'm looking at Virginia Commonwealth.
Okay.
That'll
be a little bit earlier.
In the A10 and coming up in about an hour and a half.
About 90 minutes.
I think they're a very overwhelming defensive team. St. Joe stung me in the first round too. They had a comeback victory. They played very, very well, and I think they were kind of a chic pick. I win against. It was a tough day for me out there. It's like a couple bad beats where teams didn't score for long stretches, but I think VCU with the rebounding and defense is worth a look here. In this game off the games that we hadn't discussed yet. How about this Temple team? Ever since they've been the scrutiny.
They were accused.
Did you watch their game against UTSA?
I did not see it, no.
Don't drill me if I have the details wrong, but they called a timeout. I think they were up 1 with like 40 seconds left, and there was maybe 12 on the shot clock, and they had the ball up 1, and they inbound it, and the guard just walks back to commit a backcourt violation. Like he dribbles it and steps, and they turn. I'm like, and the announcer's like, "This is unfathomable." I really. Is it unfathomable? And they end up UTSA misses and they advance. But they've been very good against the spread too since that whole crazy game with since UAB.
People have been joking that they're trying to keep people the scent off of the shenanigans.
All of a sudden, Temple
has risen.
Temple wins the tournament and then gets banned 2 days later.
It'll be the field of 63 coming up in the NCAA tournament. But yeah, I think it's an interesting story because the way the betting market was acting when there was the kind of rumors of the point shaving, and then they never came close to covering the number either. It opened, I think, 2.5, ended up closing 7.5. They lost by like 20 something or whatever it was.
We followed the market and we went from 2 to 8, but we never took any bets. But we followed the market, so we weren't out of line with the market if a team was going to come and hit us, or if there was.
Were you surprised that people were taking bets on that stuff? The fact that there was the rumors of potential point shaving?
I know this is now that they were U.S. Interior was looking in for several games. We didn't see anything strange. I could give you 5 other games where I thought the betting and live movements in college basketball.
A little funny.
More in smaller conferences, but like Towson State. There was a Towson State, North Carolina AT&T game where we saw the first half go from like 3.5 to 8, and they never touched the game. Everybody just pounded the side. And then a few days later, the same thing happened with Louisiana against Southern Miss. To me, that was more than because when I look at that UAB game, like objectively, shouldn't they have been a bigger favorite than 2 to begin with? I mean, you could objectively make the argument they should have been 4 or 4.5. But I mean, they'll go through it, and Matt Holt and his team do a great job. I know that somebody said the FBI was involved, and people called Derek and wanted, did we know anything about that? And really, we didn't. They weren't on our radar at all.
Yeah, it's almost like the start of a documentary, this Temple situation. But they're catching 13.5 today. They can even find a 14 in the market against FAU, the Owls, who made it all the way to the Final Four last year before being heartbroken by the San Diego State at the buzzer there in that Final Four game. FAU, do you think a lot of people are going to like them in the tournament just because like it's a familiar name based on last year's run, and now it's like, oh, here they are again? It's like a lot of the same cast of characters, same coach. Are people still going to like kind of like, oh, they're just a tournament team? And
they probably will. They'll take an inordinate amount of money. I've watched them play too often against what I thought were inferior teams and have really lackluster performances this year that I'm sort of off of them. But you make an interesting point that you might get some value if you do like the other side.
Like FAU right now, Bracket Matrix has them as a 9 seed. If they're in the same pot with Purdue, how many people are going to bet FAU to beat Purdue? Or in the brackets, bet FAU to upset Purdue? Like, I think that will be like the popular.
Right.
Not many people are going to have Purdue in their Final Four.
Very few. As the number one.
Outside of Purdue alums.
They might, in the history of these brackets that people fill out, be the lowest percentage 1 seed ever picked to be a Final Four, like in 30% maybe or less.
Maybe it's time to get greedy when people are selling.
No, stop. Arkansas Little Rock.
Aaron Wilson will help us wrap up the show next.
This is the Lombardi Line with former NFL executive Michael Lombardi. Now here is your host, Femi Abebefe, on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network.
There's never been a better time to have skin in the game with the DraftKings Sportsbook because right now we have a VSiN exclusive offer for new DraftKings customers. Earn a $500 bonus bet for every $1,000 you wager. You can earn up to $2,500 worth of bonus bets in your first 3 days on DraftKings. Don't wait. Download the app now. Use code Lombardi when you sign up and earn a $500 bonus bet for every $1,000 you wager now. Make sure you do that code Lombardi. This is specifically for VSiN viewers and listeners. It's made for you guys. Best time of the year. Take advantage of the opportunity, DraftKings Sportsbook. This is the Lombardi Line here, wrapping things up on the DraftKings Network. Femi Abebefe alongside Mike Palm. It's been a fun show, fun couple of hours as we've been heading towards Conference Championship Saturday. We're discussing this right before we got on the air for this segment here. We got a funny tweet from Michael Burns asking if I give voters a piece of some of my awards tickets. No, I do not. I don't influence the voters in any such way. I just listen to what they're going to do. and then I bet. So that's that. So we'll settle that right there.
Also in the We Get Tweets section, thank you to Mike Hoops, at Hoops_Mike, who said, Mike, you said Billy Gillespie for those Florida teams. Of course, Billy Donovan wins back-to-back national titles in 06. Thank you. Corrections for the correction.
Head coach of the Chicago Bulls.
Yes, sir.
Billy Donovan.
Billy Donovan.
Providence's own.
Providence. A lot of guys went through Providence and built their careers.
Good. Patino, he was another Providence guy. Yeah. I was on St. John's yesterday afternoon. Took the 9.5, and boy, was it sweaty. It was.
What was the total in that game?
I mean, whatever it was, it should have flown. Right? Flown over. That was a high score game. I mean, it's like 90. Was it 95-90? I think was the final score of that game. So.
What have we got, Femi? Did you find a halftime line? Princeton down 13 to Brown at half.
Let's take a look
as
at this
a 10-point favorite. I'm interested in the second half line.
The second half line is, as right now, it's refreshing for me right now. Of course, it's taking forever. It's still populating on my odds board. I'm looking at DraftKings, though. They have Brown laying 5.5 in game, so you can kind of do the reverse for the second half number. They're 149.
7.5.
So yeah, 7.5 is our second half number. Once again, Princeton went off as a 10-point favorite in this game, and they're trailing by 13 in this spot. So. Not ideal for the number 1 seeded Princeton Tigers, who were taking on a below 500 Brown team that won 12 games all season.
But they were 8-6 in conference, 12-17 overall, shooting 40% from 3.
That'll do it.
If I told you, as if they're saying 30 for 30, more people watched the Big Ten Women's Championship game between Iowa and Nebraska than watched Duke Carolina.
Ooh. Man, that's
true. It's a true statement. It was the most watched basketball game, men or women, last week. 4 million viewers.
That's crazy.
Isn't it?
It's the Caitlin Clark effect.
I bet
you guys will see it at the window here, too, with the women's tournament.
So we got some of it last year, but she kind of exploded when they made the Final Four.
Yeah.
We'll get the full effect this year. I told Mitch and Paul, I bet if you average the last 5 women's tournaments, our right on this year's women's tournament will be 10x the average.
Wow.
Now, maybe it'll be 4 or 5x of last year, but it will be absolutely incredible. And if they should somehow, make it to the final against South Carolina or something like that, or, play one of the Giants along the way, a UConn, a USC somewhere, I think it will be remarkable.
I'm looking right now at the bracketology. Shout out to Charlie Cream, the bracketologist for the women's college basketball for ESPN. He obviously has Iowa as a number 1 seed. The 2 seed in their region would be UCLA. So it looks like it's a region that they should be able to manage.
Where would they be in a national semifinal? Who's the one opposite?
The one out
them?
there is Stanford. So they'd be a Stanford Final Four.
So they still have Stanford. Do they have USC as a 1? Does he have USC as a 1 as well?
He has USC as a 1.
So the Pac-12 got 2.
Yep. So Stanford, SC, Iowa, and South Carolina.
Who's the 2 in South Carolina's bracket?
Ohio State.
Boy, they fell. They were ranked 3rd in the country. They lost to Iowa at Carver Hawkeye, and then lost to Maryland by 20 in their first game in the Big Ten tournament.
I'm not encouraging anything nefarious to go on with the selection committee, but what you just said about Iowa, Ohio State being a higher rated television rating than Duke, North Carolina, which is like the preeminent rivalry in all of college sports, you kind of rig it for it to be an easy bracket for Iowa to get to the Final Four. Honestly, with money being a situation, if you're putting a bracket together and you know that this is a television show.
Even the men say, they have latitude by region, right? Mm-hmm. They have certain latitudes in the protected seats. So
because you don't want Iowa getting upset in the Sweet 16.
Of course not. It'll be interesting next year if the women's NCAA game can carry this on. And then can the WNBA explode? I mean, 4 million people on Sunday morning were watching the big.
I was watching it.
Right?
It was a good
sold
game.
out.
It was a really good game.
6 weeks before every session, sold out every ticket in Minneapolis. Oh, it was a great game. They should have lost.
They should have.
Nebraska was up 7 with a little over 2 minutes to go.
Yeah.
She had a terrible shoot. She was like one of her first 12 from 3. She didn't play great in the Big Ten tournament.
But they were gritty. They got the stops when they needed, and they were.
I took 17. I took 17. No way should that line have been 17. Nebraska beat them, and you knew this was going to be a game that Nebraska had circled anyhow, because remember, Lisa Bluter interrupted their press conference to complain, 1, that Iowa didn't go first, which is Big Ten protocol, and 2, that they were playing music while Iowa was shooting free throws. And she was yelling, cursing, and it could be heard while the Nebraska girls were trying to do their interviews.
Lisa Bluter, she's always complaining about something. I mean, I'm good on Lisa Bluder.
How about the Iowa coaches? Every coach has been there 25 years. They never get rid of anybody.
And I'm tired of all of them.
All of them.
Ferentz, Fran McCaffrey, Bluder. Like, I'm good.
We went to the Cubs gave us a tour, and we were going through their workout rooms and like the playlist in their workout room was quite interesting.
Was it?
It was like country music.
Really?
And one of the ladies that was giving the tour said, maybe somebody lost a bet on this music. And I said, who's the DJ? Kirk Ferentz? And not a lot of people got the reference, but it was strange. One guy that was with us goes, everybody's just getting their earbuds. They're not listening to whatever's playing anyhow. They're tuned out.
They got the noise cancellation going on.
It's interesting all the changes Council has made to their workout regimen.
Yeah.
That they were going through.
Are you buying into the Cubs?
I am. That's the only team I bet a win total on. I bet over 84. He's a huge acquisition, but so they were saying, in past years, and not just with Ross, but in past years, all outfielders would go to this field and the drill would be on a rotation. Council doesn't do any of that. It's all one-on-one, which means the coaches are now working 14-hour days instead of 6 because it's all one-on-one drills with everybody. Yeah. And the pitchers this year also have a regimen where they throw footballs.
Oh, okay.
I never have ever heard of that.
I know I've seen some of the Mariners pitchers at spring training kind of tossing football, but I always thought that was just like, hey, they're just having fun. Yeah. But maybe it's like an actual thing.
So they're building some sort of a muscle in
the elbow?
Their arm. I don't know. It was very interesting. Of course, they're doing all the tech stuff and measuring everything. They have this pitching lab that's 300 different angles of your delivery and all that. Oh. So it's
dialed
interesting.
In.
Oh, yeah.
I think it's dialed in way more than we give it credit for.
Stuff in baseball might be off the charts compared to everything else, right?
They were the first sport to embrace it, And then basketball, now football is kind of in it as well.
I remember I played, I'm not trying to say I was it, but I was decent through junior high, and I played the first, but they want you to lift weights for the other sport. I never wanted to lift weights because it would throw off my shot in basketball, and I was a shooting guard, right? And I just didn't want to, I would only want to bulk up lower half because of the running, the sprinting and that.
You can do some functional stuff, It's because I mean, you were not the only one. All the basketball players at my high school were the same way. They're like, oh no, I don't want to mess up my jump shot. It's like
that's all we have.
Of course, the football team were in there all summer long. It's like, hey, how was summer vacation? Well, I was running stadium stairs and lifting weights. It was awesome. I'm ready for school to get back, please. But yeah, that's how it was back in the day there. We
want to go through best bets? You got all the best bets?
Let's go run through them. I know you got some hockey that you want to give out here.
I do. Wild Blues. Both these teams try to make a push still on the periphery of the playoffs as we get to crunch time in the NHL. I play the first period under 1.5. Should be Fleury and Bennington. They've played 2 low-scoring games in the last 3 weeks. Also, I was talking to you off the air. Calgary beating the Knights. They were down 1-0 going to the third the other night. Gets them to within 8 of the Knights, who are the second wild card in the West. Gives them a little hope. They host Montreal today. I thought this was a short number coming off a big win. -165. And then going in about an hour in the Premier League. I like Tottenham at Fulham. On the three-way here, I believe +105 I got it at. Big win for them, going to Aston Villa, beating them 4-0, closing that gap now in the race for 4th and qualifying for Champions League next year.
Arsenal going to win the Prem?
They might inherit it. Yeah. I mean, I didn't even think about them. I still think Klopp's last year that Liverpool probably pull it out.
Storybook ending. Yeah. For me, my best bets, Wisconsin +5.5. We discussed that earlier. Iowa State 5.5 as well. NC State +5 first half against North Carolina. You can find a better number out there in the market. Then I'm going with Dana Altman on the money line. Oregon Ducks +125 in the Pac-12 title game against Colorado. Those are my bets for today. I'm telling you, the board has been falling my way in college hoops. Hopefully it stays that way. Hopefully we stay hot. Hopefully you stay hot as well. That does it for us here on the Lombardi Line. For Mike Palm, for our producer Stephanie Kamershak, and the entire crew behind the glass, I'm Femi Abebefe saying good luck with all the bets. Coming up next, The Handle with Matt Brown and Stormy Bonatoni here on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network.